My name is Teresa C. Collins, and I am 31 years old. People think the worst day of your life is when someone you love dies. They're wrong. The worst day is what comes after, when you realize the only person who ever truly saw you is gone, and everyone else never really did. My mother died on a cold Tuesday in October. I was 14. Cancer had taken her slowly, painfully, over 2 years. By the end, she barely had the strength to sit up, but somehow she was still the strongest person in the room. She was the only reason our house ever felt balanced, the only reason things ever felt fair. When she was alive, everything was equal. If my brother Daniel got something, I got something. If he needed help, she helped him. If I needed help, she helped me. No favorites, no conditions, just love. But the day we buried her, that balance disappeared. I remember standing at the funeral, staring at the gray sky, the smell of damp grass and flowers filling the air. People whispered, hugged each other, cried softly. My father stood near the casket, his arm wrapped tightly around Daniel. Daniel was 16, taller than me, stronger, already stepping into the role my father wanted him to fill. "You're the man of the house now," my father said to him, loud enough for everyone to hear. I stood 3 feet away. No one said anything to me. Not one word. Not until she came. Margaret Hale, my mother's best friend. She found me standing alone near the back, my hands clenched so tight my fingers hurt. She knelt in front of me, took my hands gently, and looked straight into my eyes. "I promised your mother I would always look out for you," she said softly, "no matter what." At the time, I didn't understand. I thought she was just being kind. I didn't know my mother had seen all of this coming. After the funeral, our house changed. Not all at once, but enough that you could feel it. Daniel's life expanded. Mine shrank. He got a car for his 16th birthday. A used one, sure, but still. My father started putting money aside for his college fund every month. He signed him up for golf lessons, took him on campus tours, talked about his future like it was something guaranteed. I asked for money for textbooks once. Just once. He didn't even look at me. "Ask your brother," he said. I already gave him the budget. The budget. Like I had to go through Daniel to access anything in my own life. So I stopped asking. I got a job instead. 16 years old, waking up before sunrise, working at a coffee shop before school, buying my own notebooks, my own clothes, my own winter coat when mine broke and no one noticed. One morning, I needed Daniel's car. Just for 2 hours. I had an interview for a scholarship, my only chance to afford college without drowning in debt. I knocked on his door. "Can I borrow the car?" I asked. "Just in the morning." He didn't even look up from his phone. "I need it." "The bus doesn't run that early." He shrugged. Not my problem. So I walked 2.5 miles in the dark. I got the scholarship, but that wasn't the point. The point was, I had to earn everything alone. And years later, I found out something that changed everything. My mother had set up a college fund for me, the same amount as Daniel. After she died, my father transferred every dollar into Daniel's account. Every single dollar. He didn't even hesitate. Didn't wait. Just erased me. I graduated at the top of my class. Full scholarship. Awards. Recognition. My father took Daniel to a basketball game that same day. I walked across that stage alone. Almost. Because Margaret was there, clapping, holding a single sunflower. That night, I packed my things. 2 suitcases. I walked past my father in the living room. "You leaving?" he asked. "Yes." "Lock the door on your way out." That was it. No goodbye. No good luck. No call me when you get there. Just lock the door. And I did. I locked it. And I never came back. I didn't cry when I left. Not that night. Not when I carried my 2 suitcases down the cracked front steps. Not when I closed the trunk of my car. Not even when I drove away and the house disappeared in my rearview mirror. I thought I would. I thought something inside me would break, collapse, finally give in to everything I had been holding back for years. But it didn't. It just went quiet. I rented a small room above a laundromat in a college town 40 minutes away. The place smelled like detergent and heat, and the walls were thin enough that I could hear every spin cycle like it was happening inside my head. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I worked 2 jobs. Coffee shop in the mornings, restaurant at night, classes in between. Sleep when I could, 4 hours if I was lucky. Some nights I would sit at the edge of my bed, staring at my hands, wondering how I was still going. Wondering how long I could keep going like this. Margaret tried to help. She invited me over one night, sat me at her kitchen table, and quietly pulled out a checkbook. "Your mother left something with me," she said. "Let me use it to help you." I stared at the checkbook, then at her, and I shook my head. "No," I said. "I need to do this myself. She didn't argue. She just studied me for a moment, then nodded. You sound just like your mother. That was the only thing that kept me steady sometimes. The idea that I was still hers. I got my real estate license at 22, my first sale at 23, my first year making real money at 26. It wasn't luck. It was survival. Every deal, every client, every late night was built on something deeper than ambition. It was built on the need to never go back. 10 years after I locked that door behind me, I stood in front of a house worth $770,000, and I signed my name on it. Not for me, for Daniel. The call came out of nowhere. I hadn't heard from my father in almost 3 years. No birthdays, no holidays, no how are you, nothing. Then suddenly, Teresa, he said. No greeting, no warmth. Your brother needs a place. Just like that, straight to the point. He's getting serious with a girl from a good family, he continued. He can't be renting some apartment. Help him out. Help him out. Like I was still the one responsible. Like nothing had changed. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, staring out my apartment window at a life I had built completely on my own. I was 29. I had closed more deals that year than I could count. I had savings, a reputation, a future. And somehow, that one sentence pulled me right back into the role I thought I had escaped. Help him out. I should have said no. I knew that. Every logical part of me knew that. But there was still something else inside me. Something weaker, something hopeful. Maybe this time. Maybe if I did this one thing, they would see me. Maybe I wouldn't be invisible anymore. So I said yes. I bought the house. 4 bedrooms, quiet suburb, big yard, $770,000. And I made one decision. One small decision that would later save me. I kept the deed in my name. That wasn't even my idea. It was Margaret's. She sat across from me the day I told her, her expression calm but firm. You're trying to buy love, she said. I didn't deny it. Just promise me something, she added. Keep your name on that deed. I hesitated, then nodded. I promise. She took a copy of the paperwork, held onto it like she already knew I might need it one day. Daniel moved in a week later. He didn't ask questions. Didn't ask whose name was on the house. Didn't thank me. It started small. So small I almost convinced myself it didn't matter. The first Thanksgiving after he moved in, I called. What time is dinner? I asked. There was a pause. Oh, Nicole's family is coming this year, he said. We don't really have enough space. Not enough space. In a 4-bedroom house. I paid for. It may be next time, he added. Next time. Christmas came. We're going to Nicole's parents' place, he said. It's bigger. His birthday. Just keeping it small this year. Every time. A reason. Just believable enough that I could pretend it wasn't deliberate. But it was. He wasn't just excluding me. He was editing me out. Nicole came from money. Real money. The kind that didn't ask questions. The kind that expected a certain image. And I didn't fit that image. So Daniel erased me. Carefully. Quietly. Like I had never been there at all. The moment I realized how far he had gone wasn't during a call. Or a conversation. It was a photo. A simple post on Nicole's social media. Christmas. They were all standing around the dining table. Decorations I had picked out. Furniture I had paid for. Lights I had installed. And the caption. Family Christmas at our home. Just us. A small family. A small family. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I saved it. I didn't know why. Not yet. But something inside me knew. This wasn't just distance anymore. This was something else. Something deeper. Something deliberate. And I had no idea how far he was willing to take it. The house was never really about Daniel. Not entirely. That was the lie I told myself at first, because the truth was harder to sit with. The truth was that I bought that house because some wounded part of me still believed love could be earned if I just gave enough of myself away. Money, time, silence, patience. I kept thinking there had to be some invisible threshold where my father would finally look at me and see a daughter instead of a convenience, where my brother would finally treat me like blood instead of background. So when I signed for that house, I wasn't just buying property. I was buying one last chance to belong. Margaret saw it immediately. She always did. The day I told her I was moving forward, she sat across from me at her kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a mug of tea, gone cold, and watched me with that quiet, devastating kind of sadness that only comes from loving someone enough to know exactly how this story ends. You are not buying him a home, she said. You are buying hope, and hope is expensive when it's placed in the wrong hands. I tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't, because she was right, and I hated that she was right. Maybe this time will be different, I said anyway. The word sounded small even to me. Margaret didn't argue. She just slid the folder back toward me and tapped the deed. Then keep your name on it. Promise me. I promised. Daniel moved in like the place had always been waiting for him. No awkwardness, no hesitation, no moment of gratitude. He walked through the front door with Nicole beside him, both of them smiling, already talking about paint colors and furniture and where they wanted to host Thanksgiving. He didn't ask me how closing went. He didn't ask what the monthly taxes were or how any of it had been arranged. He just moved through the rooms with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his whole life being handed things and had never once stopped to wonder what they cost someone else. I stood in the entryway watching him laugh in the sunlight, pouring through the tall front windows, and I told myself it was fine, that maybe gratitude would come later, that maybe this was just his way, that maybe. I had built entire years of my life out of that word. At first, the exclusions were so subtle they almost felt accidental. The first Thanksgiving after Daniel moved in, I called to ask what time I should come by. He hesitated, then told me Nicole's family would be there, and there really would not be enough room. You know how it is, he said, like the sentence should explain everything. I stared at my phone after the call ended and looked around my apartment, at my small table with one plate set out for dinner, and tried to convince myself it did not matter. Christmas was worse because by then I understood the pattern, but I still let myself hope. I called again. He said they were spending it with Nicole's parents because their house was bigger and more convenient for everybody. Convenient. Such a clean word for something so ugly. On my birthday, no one called. On his birthday, I saw photos online of a dinner in the dining room of the house I paid for, with candles lit, wine glasses raised, my father smiling in a way I had not seen since my mother was alive. There was no empty chair for me, because in their version of the evening, I had never been meant to be there. Nicole was sweet, at least from what I could tell in the beginning. Beautiful in a polished, effortless way. The kind of woman who grew up around money and moved through the world expecting it to open for her. She was kind in public, warm in photos, careful with people's feelings in the way women like her are taught to be. But kindness means very little when it is built on a false story. Daniel had given her one. In his version, he was the devoted son, the stable man from a small, close family, the kind of person who could slide neatly into the Ashfords' world without raising suspicion. And I did not fit. I was untidy. I complicated the narrative. So he solved the problem the easiest way possible. He removed me. The proof came on a cold December night when I was scrolling through Nicole's Instagram after a long day. I do not even know why I was looking. Habit, maybe. Hope. Pain has routines just like joy does. There was a photo of Nicole and Daniel standing beside my father in the dining room of the house. Garland looped around the banister, gold candles on the mantel, the table set with heavy china I had watched Nicole pick out in a tagged post weeks earlier. They were all smiling into the camera like some glossy holiday card, and the caption read, "Christmas at our home, just us, a small family, and that's all we need." Our home. A small family. I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower. I could feel something hardening quietly inside me. I took a screenshot and saved it to a folder, then another, and another. Something in me had started collecting evidence before my mind caught up enough to admit why. The real turning point came from Rachel, a colleague at my brokerage who had a talent for hearing things people thought were private. She called me one afternoon, her tone unusually careful. "This is going to sound strange," she said, "but does your brother live in that colonial on Maple Ridge?" My whole body went alert. Yes, why? There was a pause. Because somebody matching his description was asking Jim Bowen's office about adverse possession. My mouth went dry. Adverse possession. A legal way to claim a property over time if you occupy it openly and continuously, and the rightful owner does not challenge it. It is not easy. It takes time. But he had asked. He was not just living in my house and pretending it was his. He was looking for a way to make the lie permanent. I thanked Rachel, hung up, and sat frozen at my desk while the office buzzed around me. The fluorescent lights above me hummed. Someone laughed near the printer. A deal closed 2 desks over. But all I could hear was one sentence, over and over. "He is trying to take your house." I called Margaret that night. She listened in silence while I told her everything. When I finished, she exhaled slowly and said, "Then now you know." Her voice was not surprised, just tired. I kept thinking he would stop somewhere, I admitted. I kept thinking there had to be a line. Margaret was quiet for a long time. The line was your existence, Teresa, and he crossed that years ago. That hurt because it was true. The house had not created the betrayal. It had just revealed it in clearer light. Daniel did not see me as family he owed honesty to. He saw me as a resource, something useful, something expendable. And the worst part was that I had helped build the lie by staying quiet every time it would have been easier to tell the truth. Then came the wedding. Daniel and Nicole got engaged in January. The ceremony was set for June. 200 guests, country club crowd, imported flowers, every detail carefully designed to look effortless and expensive. I told myself one last thing, one final pathetic thing I am almost ashamed to admit. If he invites me, then maybe there is still something left to save. If he includes me in the biggest day of his life, then maybe all of this has just been cowardice and image management and not complete erasure. I held on to that thought like a child clutching the last thread of a blanket already burning at the edges. I should have known better. Still, I waited, because hope, even humiliated hope, dies slowly. The invitations went out in March, 200 of them. Thick cream paper, gold embossing, the kind of detail that tells people this is not just a wedding, it is a statement. I didn't receive one. I didn't even know they had been sent until Karen called me on a Thursday afternoon, her voice bright and casual, completely unaware she was about to split something open. "I got the invite," she said. "So are you doing a speech or anything?" The silence on my end stretched too long. She caught it before I said a word. "Teresa, you got one, right?" I swallowed. "No." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "You're kidding." "I'm not." She sent me a picture of the invitation. I stared at it on my screen. Daniel Andrew Collins and Nicole Elizabeth Ashford. June 15th. Reception to follow at the couple's home. The couple's home. My house. I felt something cold move through me, slow and steady, like ice forming under the surface of water. I called Daniel. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I called again. Same result. I texted him instead. I kept it simple because anything more would have sounded like pleading, and I refused to beg for a place at a table I paid for. I saw the invitation. Am I coming? 3 hours passed. 3 long, quiet hours, where I sat on my couch staring at my phone like it might change the answer if I waited long enough. Then the message came through. "Teresa, we talked about this. The guest list is tight. Nicole's family comes first. Don't make this about you." My fingers hovered over the screen. We never talked about this. We hadn't talked about anything in years, not really. I typed one sentence. "The wedding is at my house, Daniel." The read receipt came instantly. Then his reply. "It's been my house for 2 years. Everyone knows that. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, slower, letting every word land exactly where it was meant to hurt. That sentence didn't just dismiss me. It rewrote reality. In his version, time had erased ownership. Presence had replaced truth. The longer he lived there, the more real the lie became, until even he believed it. And maybe that was the most dangerous part. Not that he lied to other people, that he had convinced himself the lie was justified. I set my phone down carefully, like it might break if I moved too fast, and I sat very still. Something inside me shifted. Not violently, not dramatically, quietly, like a door closing somewhere deep in my chest. I realized then that this was not a misunderstanding. This was not a temporary lapse or a moment of selfishness. This was who he was when it mattered. I called my father the next morning. He picked up on the second ring, which told me he had been expecting it. "Did you know I'm not invited?" I asked. No greeting, no softness, just truth. "Your brother's wedding," he said. "His rules." "It's my house," I said. There was a pause, then his answer came back flat and dismissive. "You gave it to him." "I didn't give it to him," I replied. "I let him live there." Same thing. The ease with which he said it made my chest tighten. Like years of legal reality, financial responsibility, and emotional weight could be reduced to a convenient assumption. "It's not the same thing," I said. "Teresa," he cut in, irritation creeping into his voice, "don't start. You always do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Make everything dramatic," he said. "Just let your brother be happy for once." For once. As if Daniel had ever been denied anything in his life. As if happiness had been rationed and I had taken more than my share. "What about me?" I asked. It came out quieter than I expected. Not angry, just tired. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear the television in the background. Sports commentary, loud and constant, filling the space where something real should have been. Then he said it, softly, almost kindly. "You'll be fine. You always are." And that was it. 6 words. No raised voice. No cruelty in tone. Just certainty. The certainty that I would absorb whatever they did and keep standing. That I was strong enough to survive anything. So it did not matter what they put me through. That my resilience excused their absence. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, staring at nothing, letting that sentence settle into me like something permanent. "You'll be fine. You always are." It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. It was permission. Permission to never show up for me again. I did something that night I hadn't done before. I wrote Daniel a message. Not angry, not emotional, just honest. I told him about every holiday I missed, every call he didn't return, every excuse I made for him, because the truth felt too heavy to carry. I told him about the college fund, about the house, about why I bought it. I told him the part I had never said out loud, that I thought maybe it would bring us closer, that maybe if I gave enough, he would finally see me. Then I asked him one question. "Do you actually want me out of your life? Or have you just been too comfortable to notice I'm still here?" I watched the message turn from delivered to read, the small blue indicator that told me he had seen every word, then nothing, no reply, no acknowledgement, just silence, the kind that answers more clearly than any sentence ever could. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Teresa. This is Nicole." My chest tightened as I read the message. "Daniel told me you've been pressuring him about the wedding. I understand you feel left out, but this is our day. Please respect our wishes." Then another message came through before I could even process the first. "We appreciate the house, but don't use it as leverage." I read that twice. Don't use it as leverage. The words sat heavy in my mind. Daniel hadn't just excluded me. He had built a story around my absence. In that story, I wasn't the sister who had been ignored, erased, and replaced. I was the difficult one, the controlling one, the person who used money to manipulate people. He had taken everything I gave and turned it into something ugly. And Nicole believed him. Why wouldn't she? She didn't know me. She only knew the version of me he allowed to exist. I put my phone down slowly and leaned back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. I didn't cry. Not this time. There were no tears left for this kind of realization. Instead, there was something else. Something colder, quieter, more stable. Like the final piece of a puzzle sliding into place after years of trying to force it to fit somewhere else. I understood now. Not just what he had done, but why. I was inconvenient. I complicated the image he needed to present. I reminded him of a truth he didn't want to carry. So he removed me, cleanly, completely. And everyone else accepted that version because it was easier than asking questions. I reached for my laptop and opened it. The glow of the screen filled the room as I began pulling up records, messages, screenshots, everything I had saved without fully understanding why. Now I knew. I wasn't holding on to memories. I was holding on to proof. Not for them. For me. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to convince anyone else of the truth. I was finally ready to accept it myself. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, but because my mind was finally clear. For years, every decision I made around my family had been emotional, reactive, hopeful. I kept waiting for something to change, for someone to meet me halfway, for a moment that would prove I wasn't the only one trying. But now there was nothing left to wait for. Daniel had answered my question without saying a word. He didn't want me in his life, not publicly, not privately, not at all. And for the first time, I believed him. The next morning, I called Margaret. I told her everything. The invitation, the messages, the phone call with my father, the way Nicole had spoken to me like I was some distant inconvenience instead of family. I told her about the legal inquiry Daniel had made about adverse possession, about the photos, the captions, the slow erasure that had been happening right in front of me while I kept pretending it was temporary. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Then she said quietly, "You're not losing them, Teresa. You never had them the way you thought you did." That hurt, but it also felt honest, clean, like a wound finally exposed to air. "What do I do?" I asked. It wasn't a helpless question. It was a decision waiting to be made. Margaret didn't rush to answer. She let the weight of it sit between us for a moment. "What do you want?" she asked instead. I stared out the window, watching the early light hit the buildings across the street. For a long time, what I wanted had been simple. I wanted to be seen, to be included, to be loved without having to earn it. But that version of wanting didn't exist anymore. It had been replaced by something quieter, sharper. "I want the truth to matter," I said finally. "Then make it matter," she replied. That was the moment everything shifted from understanding to action. I called Russell Tate that afternoon. He was a real estate attorney Margaret trusted, the kind of man who didn't waste words and didn't make promises he couldn't keep. His office was downtown, all glass walls and clean lines, the kind of place where decisions felt permanent the moment you said them out loud. I sat across from him while he reviewed the documents, the deed, the purchase records, the tax filings. Everything was in my name. Everything had always been in my name. When he finally looked up, his expression was neutral but firm. "Legally, your brother has no claim to that property," he said. "No lease, no contract, no written agreement. He's a guest." A guest. The word echoed in my mind. Daniel had built an entire life inside that house. Holidays, memories, plans, a wedding. And legally, he was nothing more than a temporary presence. I asked one question. "If I sell it, can he stop me?" Russell didn't hesitate. "No." Just one word. Clear, final, uncomplicated. I felt something settle inside me when he said it. Not relief, not satisfaction. Something deeper. Permission. I didn't make the decision immediately. I went home and sat in silence for a long time, letting it unfold in my mind from every angle. I thought about the wedding, about the guests, about Nicole standing there, believing a version of the story that didn't include me. I thought about my father sitting at that table, raising a glass, in a house he had nothing to do with, letting Daniel credit him for something I had built alone. I thought about the years I had spent trying to hold on to something that had already let go of me. And then I thought about my mother, about the way she had always insisted on fairness, on truth, on not letting anyone be less than they were. I could almost hear her voice in the quiet. Don't disappear just because they decided to look away. I picked up my phone and called Russell back. "List the house," I said. There was a pause. "You're sure?" he asked. "Once we move forward, it's done." I looked around my apartment, at the life I had built piece by piece, without shortcuts, without anyone handing me anything. "I'm sure," I said. The process moved quickly. Russell found a buyer within 2 weeks, a young family relocating from out of state. They loved the house immediately. The layout, the yard, the light, everything Daniel had taken for granted. They made a full offer, clean, no contingencies, closing set for June 14th, one day before the wedding. I signed the paperwork in Russell's office on a Tuesday afternoon. The pen felt heavier than it should have in my hand, not because I was unsure, but because I understood exactly what it meant. This wasn't just a sale, it was an ending, a clean break between what I had hoped for and what actually existed. When the final document slid across the table and I signed my name, I didn't feel triumph. I felt something quieter, like closing a door that had been open for far too long. Russell prepared the notice to vacate. 30 days, standard, legal, everything documented, everything clean. I chose the delivery date carefully, June 15th, the morning of the wedding. Not out of spite, not to create chaos, but because that was the moment when the truth would be impossible to ignore. That night, I sat with Margaret. We didn't talk much. She poured 2 glasses of wine and we sat at her kitchen table in comfortable silence. After a while, she looked at me and asked, "How do you want to do this?" I thought about it, about confrontation, about showing up, about saying everything I had never said. Then I shook my head. "I don't need to stand in that room to be heard," I said. "I just need him to see it." She nodded slowly. "Then let the truth speak for you." I wrote the message the next day. It took longer than I expected, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I kept removing things. Emotion, accusation, explanation, everything that could be dismissed as personal. What was left was simple, clear, impossible to argue with. Facts, documents, a deadline. When I finished, I read it one last time. 6 lines, no anger, no bitterness, just truth. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be understood. I was just done being rewritten. The closing went through on June 14th at exactly 4:17 p.m. I remember the time because I looked at the clock when Russell said, "It's done." Not dramatic, not ceremonial, just 2 words that quietly ended everything Daniel thought he owned. The house was no longer mine, which meant it was no longer his illusion to live inside. I walked out of that office into warm afternoon light, blinking like I had stepped into a different version of my life. Cars passed, people moved. Nothing about the world had changed, but something inside me had. There was no weight pressing against my chest anymore. No constant calculation of what I owed, what I should say, what I needed to tolerate to keep the peace. The peace had never been real. I had just been absorbing the conflict alone. That night, I didn't call anyone. Not Margaret, not Karen, not even Russell. I just went home, sat in the quiet, and waited. The wedding was the next day, Saturday, 82 degrees, clear sky, perfect weather for a celebration that had already collapsed, even if no one inside that house knew it yet. I drove out to the neighborhood just before sunset, not to go in, just to see it one last time. I parked at the end of the block, beneath a wide oak tree, where I could see the driveway from a distance. The house looked beautiful. I won't pretend it didn't. White lights strung along the fence, lanterns lining the walkway, cars packed along the street, expensive ones, the kind that belong to people who expect things to stay exactly the way they are. Through the open windows, I could hear music, laughter, glasses clinking, the sound of a string quartet drifting out into the evening air like nothing in the world could possibly go wrong. My phone rang. Karen, I'm inside, she whispered the moment I answered. Teresa, it's insane. The flowers alone. This must have cost a fortune. There's a full band on the patio, and the bar... She stopped herself. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be describing this to you. It's fine, I said. It wasn't. But I didn't need to hear every detail to understand what was happening inside. I could picture it clearly. Daniel in a tailored suit, Nicole in white, my father raising a glass, all of them standing in a house built on something they had erased. They just did their first dance, Karen said softly. He looks happy. Of course he did. He had always been good at that. There was a pause on the line, then her voice shifted. He's about to give a speech. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Do you want me to stay on the phone? She asked. Yes. The music faded slightly in the background as the room quieted. Then Daniel's voice came through, distant but clear enough. He thanked Nicole, her family, the guests, my father, for giving me everything, he said, including this beautiful home. There was applause. Karen inhaled sharply. She started. I heard, I said. Then he said something else, something that landed deeper than everything before it. I wish Mom could be here, he said. She's the only one missing tonight. The only one. I closed my eyes. 200 yards away, sitting alone in my car, listening to my own absence being rewritten in real time. I wasn't missing. I had been removed. That was the moment. Not the messages. Not the lies. Not even the house. This was the final line. I opened my eyes and looked at the house one last time. Then I picked up my phone. Karen, I said quietly, I'm sending it now. She didn't ask what. She already knew. I called Russell. Send it. You're sure? He asked. Yes. At 8:47 p.m., while the music still played and glasses were still raised, two things happened at the same time. The notice to vacate was delivered to the house, and the email was sent. To Daniel. To my father. To Nicole. 6 lines. 3 attachments. The deed. The sale agreement. The legal notice. Nothing emotional. Nothing personal. Just facts. The property has been sold. The transaction is complete. You have 30 days to vacate. I wish you a happy marriage. That was it. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't sit there to watch what happened next. I started the engine, drove away, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. I slept that night. Not the kind of restless, half-aware sleep I had gotten used to over the years, where my mind kept replaying conversations and rewriting outcomes that never changed. This was different, deep, quiet, the kind of sleep that comes when something inside you finally lets go. I didn't check my phone before bed. I didn't check it when I woke up. I made coffee first, sat at the table, let the morning come in slowly through the window. Only then did I pick it up. Missed calls, messages, dozens of them. Daniel, my father, unknown numbers, and Karen. I called her first. She answered immediately. Teresa, oh my God. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me. There was a pause, like she was choosing where to begin. It happened fast, she said. About 10 minutes after you sent the email, Daniel checked his phone. He went completely pale. Not angry, not confused, just blank. I could picture it. The exact moment the ground shifted under him. He pulled your dad aside, she continued. They went into the hallway. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard your dad say, "What do you mean sold?" I closed my eyes briefly. They were trying to keep it quiet, she said. You know how people act when they're surrounded by guests. smiling, nodding, pretending everything's fine while everything's falling apart. Of course. That's what they had always done. Nicole noticed, Karen said. That part didn't surprise me either. It's her wedding, I said. Of course she noticed. She took his phone, Karen added. Read the email, all of it. Silence settled between us for a second. What did she say? I asked. Karen exhaled slowly. She asked one question, she said. Who is Teresa Collins? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The question itself was enough. Daniel tried to talk, Karen went on. Tried to explain, but he couldn't get it out. He just kept saying it was complicated. Complicated. That word again. The same one people use when the truth is too simple to defend. Then her mother stepped in, Karen said. Margaret Ashford. I had never met her, but I knew exactly the type. Measured. Sharp. Not someone who tolerated uncertainty in things that mattered. She read the documents, Karen said. The deed. Your name. The sale agreement. Everything. I could almost see it, her eyes moving across the page. Each line dismantling the version of reality she had been given. What did she do? I asked. She didn't yell, Karen said. That's what made it worse. She just looked at your dad, then at Daniel, and asked why none of this had been mentioned before. Of course she did. Because that was the real issue. Not the house. Not the sale. The lie. She asked him if he had a sister, Karen said quietly. I felt something shift again. Not pain. Not anger. Something else. Final. And? I asked. Karen didn't answer right away. Then she said, he hesitated. That was it. That was all it took. Not a denial. Not a correction. A hesitation. A single second where the truth could have been spoken. And wasn't. That's when everything changed, Karen said. People started putting it together. Conversations stopped. The music cut out. Guests started leaving. I pictured it. The slow unraveling. The way a room shifts when something fundamental breaks. Not loudly, but completely. Nicole walked out, Karen added. I let that sit. And Daniel, I asked? He stayed, she said. But he looked like he didn't know where to stand anymore. For the first time in my life, neither did I. Because I wasn't there. I wasn't standing in the corner. Wasn't watching from the edge of the room. Wasn't waiting to be acknowledged. I was outside of it. Completely. And that was the difference. What about my father? I asked. Karen let out a quiet breath. He didn't say much, she said. Which, I think, says everything. Yes, it did. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she said, Are you okay? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Then I said, I think I am. And I meant it. Not because everything was resolved. Not because anything had been fixed. But because for the first time, I wasn't carrying it anymore. Over the next few weeks, the story spread. Of course it did. Stories like that always do. People talked, speculated, reconstructed events they had only partially witnessed. But the core of it stayed the same. A man built his life on a lie. And the truth showed up uninvited. Daniel called. I answered once. Not because I owed him anything, but because I needed to hear it. You can't do this, he said. This is my home. No, I replied. It never was. Silence. Then softer. We can fix this. I almost smiled. That word again. Fix. As if everything that led to this moment was just a small crack instead of a complete fracture. You had years to fix it, I said. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. Where are we supposed to go? He asked finally. I didn't hesitate. That's not my responsibility anymore. There was a long pause. Then quietly he said, I'm sorry. 2 words. Years too late. For what? I asked. He didn't answer. Because he didn't know. And that was the problem. I'm not ready to talk, I said. Then I hung up. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. 3 months later, I bought a house. A small one. 2 bedrooms. A porch. Morning light through the kitchen window. Nothing extravagant. But everything about it was mine. The day I moved in, I unpacked one box first. A framed photo of my mother. I placed it by the door, so she would be the first thing I saw every time I came home. I stood there for a moment, looking at it. Then I said quietly, I finally did it right this time. I used part of the money to start something new. A foundation. In her name. For girls like me. Girls who had to build their lives without the support they deserved. Girls who were told they would be fine, and had to figure out what that actually meant on their own. I didn't tell my family. They wouldn't understand it. And for once, that didn't matter. Because family, I realized, isn't about who stays. It's about who sees you. Who chooses you. Who doesn't need to be reminded that you exist. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself.